Warm greetings. And thank you, Gita, for accepting this invitation to interact with us on our research on women in built environment, or architecture, we call it sometimes. And this research is mainly to acknowledge and appreciate the presence as well as the participation of women in making of the built environment. And the research method is called autoethnography. And it's, in simple word, it means your life and my pen, or our pen. It's a beautiful team of young scholars with me. In the following conversation, I'm going to ask you very simple questions about how you have really, conducted your life and what you are today through that journey. So it's more about knowing the woman who is Gita Balakrishnan, and then understanding what it is to be a woman in the profession. So this meeting is going to be recorded. It is already in record, and we are also live. So thank you so much for agreeing once again. And I would like to take your consent to go ahead further with the interaction. Thank you so much, Gita. You are on mute, Gita.
Yeah, please go ahead. I thought
okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So because we are meeting for the first time, I'm also quite excited because it's going to be very spontaneous and, natural, which is the whole idea, that we capture your life as natural as possible, because we are also trying to come up with a coffee table book for all other women in the profession and other men in the profession as well. So let me start with a very simple question, and I would like you to take your memory back to your school days, high school days probably. What brought you to architecture?
Yeah, so I had a fairly incident-riddled I had a very unfortunate incident in my class 12. I was honestly training for medicine and engineering as well. In class 12, I was actually raped. And there was an attempt on my life. And
oh
that
my
changed.
God, sorry to hear that.
It's fine. It's also made me the person I am in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
It has shaped me to become the person I am. And I was 16, and it kind of changed the course of my life. There were so many things that I had as plans, but life took over in a sense.
Yes.
Priorities changed hugely. And I would say architecture chose me. It's not as if it was not on the radar, because I look back to my childhood. I remember building homes with the bricks and the mud lying behind my yard. But if it was not for that incident, maybe I would have chosen a different profession as well. It was just something that slackened my pace.
Yeah.
This was a couple of weeks, in fact, before my board exams that this happened. So it changed a lot of things for me. And yes, so architecture chose me, like I said, and it was a couple of months after I got through SPA, I did get, chosen at AIMS for a course. I was waitlisted initially and chosen at AIMS for a course. But by then I had started enjoying what I was doing. I had found my circles, and hence stayed on with architecture.
Chose to stay there. That's interesting to know. So when you were going through, and I'm so sorry to hear this, but yes, we are living in a patriarchal society. That's also the reason why we are doing this interaction, because when I was growing up, and I mean, through this research, I'm also trying to look at reflections on life of other women as well as my own self. When we were growing up, there were not many mentors, or let's say, to be specific, women mentors to really tell us what professionally architecture is and how it is to be in the profession and all. So I would like to know a little bit more about when you chose afterwards not to go to medicine and stay around in architecture. And I'm sure you had very similar experience, but it will be nice to hear from you. How was it in the college? Was it same as in my case, like equal number of boys and girls, and we were treated very equally. There was no sign of thinking that I am a girl or a woman, and it will be different for me in the field of architecture. What was it in your case, in your school at that time?
So I think I would like to echo, if, typically I think people would like to hear a different answer, but yes, it was very, very, it didn't even occur, like you said, it didn't even cross your mind, despite what happened to me.
Yes.
It's something that didn't make me, forget, while I'm talking on a personal front, it didn't make me concerned about being alongside men on a personal level, but it didn't, even on a professional level, I don't think it mattered. I felt as equipped or as ill-equipped as any of my classmates. Yeah, but if you talk of numbers, there were only 8 in my class, for women, and 32 men, which is 32 boys, which is not typically the ratio that would have been in all the batches across, but it was kind of unique, maybe, that we had only 8 girls. Incidentally, maybe interesting to point out that I also got into Delhi College of Engineering through my class 12 marks. Chose electrical engineering when I was filling up the form, and there was one girl to a class of 120.
Wow, that's like still like in IIT the same, huh?
So I said, there's no way I'm going to a place like that for various reasons. But yes, so yeah, so architecture, I don't think in any way made me feel inadequate or I needed to seek any kind of support because I was.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of architecture education also. I mean, we felt much more empowered when we were in the college premise. Also because I mean, I can again reflect upon, and honestly, I'm not really looking for responses which are different than my own reflection, but it's a beautiful way when I listen to people, where even if it is similar or even if it is dissimilar, and that's
but
what
also maybe important to add that in my second year, we had this powerhouse, Revati Kamath.
Oh, yeah.
And we did visit Gujarat with her. And I have in my notes somewhere a particular walk we had in Karamsad with her, where we were designing a school, and an evening where we were getting back to our accommodation. And I have noted somewhere that if I do anything worth, something in my life, this walk will have something to do with it.
And so, we are going to
see and to see and hear and be part of Revati Kamath's life, in a sense, also gives you a perspective of the power of, or even, you had Revati and Vasant, who were both
yes.
And you see a very calm and docile Vasant, and you see this very aggressive Revati. Also kind of plays a role in the kind of.
Absolutely. I can relate with when I worked with Jansam and Meena Ben, I mean, here, so it's very similar feeling I can relate with. I did my training with them, and I worked with both of them for one project each. So it was good. Anyway, coming back to, as we both have experienced it, like in college, it was not really coming even for a fraction of second or time. And many times in most of the friends and colleges and also interviews I have conducted, I learned that usually girls used to do better in the class than boys, I mean, I'm sure it was very similar to that in your time as well.
Yes, I think so. In a sense,
by marks. in
by marks, yes. I think it was also a matter of maybe they are more diligent. There are lesser distractions.
Yes.
So I guess from that perspective, but when it came to presenting, being part of groups, working together, I think it was even footing, in a sense. Yeah,
there was almost like we were in a gender neutral environment, and that I think that's the beauty of our education. But let me understand from you, how was it shaping up in your head when you were inching towards graduation and all? What next? Is it going to be different being a woman in the field, or how were you deciding what next in your life when you were into your graduation final years?
So again, being a woman in the field did not probably figure.
Yes.
It was important for me because of the experience in class 12. It was important for me to do certain things to get over that baggage.
Yes.
One of the things that I felt at some point was very important to me was to be able to live on my own for a bit. I was living in Delhi with my parents. Year 4 and 5, my father got tired of our hours. The kind of
yes, I'm working late night.
and he said, you please go to the hostel. So year 4, I moved to the hostel, rather third year, second semester, I would say. And for internship, I actually was one of the very few students, or probably one of the first in SPA who applied to intern in the US. I applied to Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh. I used to write long letters to this prof, this German prof, whose address my brother managed to get for me. And I would write to him every week and say, and he said, there's no provision for internship. There's nothing like that here. And I would say, no, you have to take me in. And finally, he did take me in. And I think it was a victory of sorts on various fronts.
Sure.
Both 7 months were very empowering for me because I was living on my own terms, understanding that I could deal with the world now without emotional and even physical support in a sense.
Yes.
So I think that was extremely crucial that happened to me. So those were my final years. I was still, there. It wasn't easy the first 4 years going out on trips with people while you're still reliving the horror at particularly at night. So it was important for me to make this. And I remember it was almost like a negotiation with my father. He wasn't very happy about my going out.
Sure, because he will be always worried about it.
Yes. And I had to tell him that this is something I had to do for myself. And Professor Chishti from SPA still asks me to talk to the students when I visit the college about this little victory or this little initiative that I took. The second thing, I think, after I got out, so I don't think I was such a thinking person when I was in college. I'm being very frank. I don't think any of my class.
All of us here in those years.
No, but there are people who did speak profound things even in college, and I was fairly simple in that sense. But once I got out of college and moved to Bangalore, I did try working with some regular architects. And there was this whole decision of whether to work with a small firm or a large firm. And I remember I had just come back from Pittsburgh after seeing Falling Water and going to Chandavarkar and Thakkar's office and being interviewed by Mr. Thakkar himself, who got so excited because they were real FLW
people.
fans. Yeah. So he, in fact, called a big chunk of the office to come and speak to me and, introduced me saying, this lady has just come back. I did get the job, but then this whole thing of whether it should be a big office or a small office, and I chose the small office, which made me most unhappy eventually. And hence, I think I became again the person. So all these choices that you could have taken and did not take. So I actually responded to a ad for a creative educationist in slums. And I said, architecture is not giving me what I want. I will choose something altogether different if I have to get that satisfaction. And the NGO that I applied to needed an architect. They were working on shelter and housing for the urban poor. And the lady who led that NGO is someone, again, who transformed. You talked about lady mentors. So she's another person who, she's not an architect, but she's an intense social worker and used to live, breathe, eat, with the affection or association with communities. It was all about that for her. And I still look up to her for those close to a decade that I spent and learned from her. So I think that was also transformational for me. I would probably have enjoyed working with CNT if I had joined them. I know that they're a fantastic firm today in retrospect, but I may not have done the things that I ended up doing. So it's all a matter of choices.
Choices we made.
Ended up with regular architecture practice, which also would have been, I guess, a route to take.
Yes, I'm sure. But I think the choice you made also made you independent much earlier in your career as compared to if you had started working in a firm where you would have been amongst the many. That is also something which is important. I mean, of course, when we start our career, we are all looking for some kind of security and some kind of work which helps us to put our foot in the profession, that's important. So let me understand from you, in your early career times, so when you started working in this firm and all, and I'm sure you had more field visits, but your kind of clientele, or let's say community, was different as compared to business as usual architectural practice. So how was it being woman in that kind of setting, because those who have worked in, builders, corporates, they have very different kind of experience being women in the field. How was it with Gita?
So again, I could have restricted my role to being the architect,
Yes.
but I actually, the role between a social activist and the architect blurred intensely.
Yes.
There was hardly a difference. I would be there at community meetings at 6 a.m, particularly on Saturdays and Sundays. Sundays before the men got drunk at the slum, I had to be there when they were in their senses to discuss things with them. So being there on time, being there late in the evenings if required, is something that I very comfortably did. I didn't talk only architecture, we talked community issues. There were celebrations that I was part of. Whenever there was a community celebration, and there were various slums that we were working in. There were a couple that were my mistake. And of course, I used to go on my bike. I was young. I was 23, 24. I was on a TVS, and I earned the moniker Luna Mele Maina. So this was a Luna bike and Maina.
TFR plus.
Mine was a TVS 60, but they preferred to call it a Luna.
So we started in that.
Right. So I would have this batch. In fact, a batch of young youth, mainly male youth. We organized them into a batch of workers who produced stabilized mud blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And they started going to different sites and using those stabilized mud blocks. We did make some demo models of, like the community center here was built with stabilized mud blocks, filler slab roofs, chapti kallu, stone roofing, and so on, as demos to instill that confidence that people can use these technologies for their own homes as well. So I don't think, again, I felt very inadequate. I was welcome, and being part of the women's discussions also makes you part of the community, right? When you visit,
absolutely,
and you're sitting with the women, chatting with them, having, carrying your lunchbox, opening it in one house in a day, another house in another day, kind of builds that.
You go beyond the profession. It's more about life and social aspects, and so. I think that's the beauty of also working with a particular section of the society, as well as, again, you mentioned that your major clients were women, and, those with whom you had to interact.
Maybe interesting to also mention that they were designing their own homes. I mean,
yes.
In some cases, it was a government project. So the home, like the home house layout was already there, site size was already there. But in some cases, it was more organic. They got what they did and then they built. So we got them to draw their own homes. And I remember this one exercise in a slum called Hoskere Halli, where most of the women drew wells in their homes, while the men drew either a cattle shed or a shop, showing where their priorities lie, And it was very interesting. Those were fairly eye-opening kind of sessions for me, young out of college. And
yes, I can imagine. Yeah. Interestingly, that nowadays colleges are taking those kind of outings as part of education, but I don't recall we had that kind of opportunity during the education. So it's good change which has come in the pedagogy, that the students get this exposure now, right in the college also.
Right.
Sometimes. You were mentioning about a few life-changing moments, which of course one was right in your high school, and then you did talk about a couple of decisions you made which also changed the way you are today. I would like to extend that a little bit further and take into account to understand the number of years you have been in the profession, and how did you transit from this role which you just mentioned to what you are today. And if you would like to mention some more life-changing moments and, some decisions which you made and what brought you today here, I'm going
Yeah.
to talk a little bit more about some interesting things which you did in the recent time when actually I started knowing more about you. So that comes later.
Yeah,
Over
I'm
to you.
glad you asked me this question. So I think the change, the switch in career or this new path that I followed started when we moved to Kolkata. Because of my husband's job, we moved here. And there's this whole thing of how do you balance uh, such moves? Do you put your foot down and say, no, I'm not going to come, and you become that that person who believes that, I mean, I believe also that I have as much of a say in a relationship, but it so happened that this move changed and broadened my canvas so much more. It was just, sorry about that. It was just, I was just sitting in a college looking at a probable offer or a temporary offer to teach in that college. And then this idea occurred to me, why not a quiz on architecture? And I walked out without meeting the college principal, and I began ideating and thinking about this. And then that's how ethos started, with that first quiz on architecture that I did. And so it was a life-changing moment. This move to Kolkata was a life-changing moment for me as well. And I could not continue the work that I was doing, which was working with slums and NGOs here, because one, I had language issues. Two, I had issues of, you need to belong to a political party or the other if you are part of this NGO setup in this city. At least in those days. And I wasn't inclined to do something like that. So it was hard. The first few months, I said, what am I going to do with myself? And then this beauty started unraveling. And I realized that it's probably the best thing that happened to me. And if I had stayed on there, maybe I would have continued working in that NGO. But this whole forming an organization which does things that, when I took on these different paths, it was largely by chance, not so much by choice, where I was made aware of what is possible. So could I be that person who makes people aware about these choices through an organization, through a forum where we all come together, and I'm able to take expertise to these students. I'm able to give them opportunities to learn outside the classroom, to broaden their horizons while they are in college. And not as a replacement for what college does, but as something that complements what college does. That's how this whole thing evolved. I think that was one so along the way, I realized that initially it was just me. I would do the sticking of the stamps to banging the nails in an auditorium where I'm conducting the event, to running around for everything else. And then slowly we started building the team. It's interesting today that I have about 15 people as part of our team, all women. Not because I'm choosing it, but it's just happening. I'm putting out this call.
They choose you.
Yeah, it's just gravitating to being an all-women organization in a sense. While I would love to have it's not as if we haven't. We've had young men as well as part of our groups, and they've come and gone. And I'm still open to that, because I think it brings a very different perspective to what we do when we have them around as well. But I think at some point, for a period in time, Ethos was also an organization that became a space where women who needed breaks in life came and found their space and kept in touch with the profession, so that they could go back without that quote unquote break again. You could go back and say, I was in the profession, I was doing things, I was keeping in touch, and I was growing. And that's something that we chose to do. And along the way, I think the different things that we've added to the bouquet of ethos are gaps that we felt strongly. So when you ask about transformational moments or things that changed, I think every day there is a discussion that sparks off something and says, hey, we should be doing this. Hey, we should be doing this. And that's how over a period of time, certain things come together and a new initiative is born. And one such thing that I'd like to quote here is when I turned 48, is when I remember going across to Brinda Somaya's office. Yeah. And we were sitting and chatting, and she's a little older to me. And we were chatting, and she said, Gita, you're at that point in life where you're going to have probably a decade more of active life left. You will continue to do things, but you know, forming new initiatives and taking them to completion, probably you'll be able to do for another decade or so more. So maybe it's time to pause, reflect, think at your past, decide to leave behind certain things, jump into new things that you'd like to do, and take them forward. And I think that's an advice I hold very dearly, and I give others as well, because I think that's how our online learning platform, which is called ASED, was born. And it was at a time, it was well before COVID. It was at a time where online learning was not something people did. And I knew of so many architects that that wanted to, give off their time and their experience. And here we were able to do that. I also would like to, at this point, acknowledge that ASED the idea was kind of started with Naresh Narasimhan. We did start talking about doing this together. And at some point, he pivoted to something else and then finally said, I don't think this is going to work. And then I went back and I asked him a year later, is it okay if I give it a shot? And I was looking at it in a very different format. So I'm not saying it still is working in the manner that Naresh and me set out to. We are not really it's not a very lucrative business or anything like that. But I'm happy that it's filling gaps that it's supposed to. And we are hanging in there and trying to see how we can make it.
When I came back from my Fulbright, I also came out with designing many courses on water. And I'm talking about 2016 and 17. And that time I was also wondering what should I do in India? I have been out for so many years, nearly 10 years I was out, and I was like, what to do and how to do and all. And actually at that time I bumped into your name because people were talking about, and even in the recent times, some months ago, someone said, how come you and Gita are still not friends? You don't know each other. I said, I know her work, but I don't know her.
Glad we are meeting.
Yes, so glad we are meeting. And this is the time we should thank Kaustubh for connecting us. The way you talked about bringing the whole idea of ethos, and I can so much resonate with it when I started my own responsible citizen fellowship. A very similar thought process that it should offer people a situation where they don't have to feel that they are unemployed. I will rather mentor them, make them stronger for future employment. And so I could resonate with everything you were mentioning right now, and how you moved on with this transition to bringing this online education or special education, which will complement the existing education. I'm trying to do that in water, and you are trying to make more awareness in the built environment and all. So it's good to hear those, initiatives. And I think this is one of my major findings in learning about women in built environment, is that as women, we have really explored the diverse opportunities which architecture offers. And I'm also not embarrassed to mention that we have actually expanded the horizon of architecture, which is not limited to just making beautiful buildings for only rich people, which is a major perception of architecture, that you have a consultancy office. Because when I wanted to start this research, I used to actually go for public lectures and guest lectures and ask students at colleges, name 5 women architects of this country. Students used to struggle to give me 5 women architects' names. And I'm talking about when I was really writing the concept note and how I would like to do this research. And then I used to get, a bit upset or depressed. And I used to say, aren't your teachers architects?
Right. Absolutely.
So how do you forget them? So in a way, what I'm trying to say is the way you have conducted your career is also a classic example to see how one can really go unconventional. And very nicely you write in the first line of your biography in the websites and everywhere in LinkedIn, sidestepped, not taking the whole this way of looking at life very prototype manner or conventional manner, but just trying to explore. And I think it is the reason of you taking certain decisions when things could have been better, or as you were reflecting that things could have been different, but taking those interesting or critical decisions also shape the way you have really conducted and your life, but importantly the way you have contributed to the profession. As you mentioned, ACE and ethos. I remember last year also someone was talking about ethos from Nagpur, that they were conducting ethos and they were looking for evaluators or something. So that time also I looked at you and I said, okay, I have to call this girl, but it's just that I was not getting the right moment to get you. So anyway, let me just ask you about some more memorable projects apart from the ones you have mentioned, where you could see that you being a woman, your design approach, your business approach, your philosophical approach were actually shaping just because you were a woman and you had this kind of experience in life, from working from slum to taking these online educations and all. Vis-a-vis conventional women who are in the, I mean, no offense to them, but just to understand how Gita took decision in designs, in business and philosophical choices. Would you like to mention some, thought process which goes through Gita when you take up a project? How do you really decide what will be best and how should I carry forward this project? You can give any example for that matter.
So I'm not sure, again, if this has anything to do with my being a woman. I'll start by qualifying that. But however, again, since you said Gita, I'm just saying. So with my team as well, I'm always urging them to, even after they do a presentation to me, I'm asking them to see what the other person listens or sees in what you have spoken, what you've presented, what you've created. And is that what you want them to gather, or is that what they want to gather from you?
Get into their shoes. Get into their shoes.
Yeah, in a sense, yes. But I think, and that's been true of the few homes that I have done as a freelance architect when I was in Bangalore, or any of the projects that we conceptualize. And hence, it's important for us to hear it from people. If we're conceptualizing a course, we try and do a survey to understand what is it that students want, what is it that colleges want. Right now, I'm working on a project through the foundation. So we started a foundation because of the epic walks that
I was coming to that after this.
So on those projects, there's one project, there are 3 projects that we've launched. One is Project Udita, which is working on inclusive design. The full form of Udita is universal design is the answer.
Yes.
And the second project is Project Bodh, which is building on design histories, where you talked about, architects building for the, rich and famous. Yes, architecture has become an extremely elitist profession and it's not accessible to everybody. So also in the space of monuments and historical structures, I think we are very busy conserving monuments that do not matter to common people, that probably common people do not even feel comfortable stepping into, because they are the scale that they are, of the purpose that they serve, and the kind of monuments we are building today. They could be the shopping malls and these large offices, which common people will never feel comfortable walking into. So what about the spaces and the buildings that they live in? Aren't they the 80% building? Yes. So I call these invisible monuments, which are very visible to us, but are really invisible to our attention. And they are the ones which will actually tell the story of a space, of a place, of a time. And so that's Project Both. And through Project Both, we are in fact embarking next week. And I'm glad we are doing this today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the time for a bit. We're walking from Konarak to Bhubaneswar as a walking studio. There are 5 local Odisha colleges that are participating in this. And we'll be interacting with settlements, with craftspeople, with homes, with local buildings along the way. And then the third initiative is Project Shrama, where I'm focusing on the gap that exists between the hands that build, which is the construction worker, and us designers, the hands that design. And that's something also I noticed extensively through my walk. And even there, we are creating, so there is a Project Dignity, Project Inclusion, and Project Empowerment as part of Shrama. And under Dignity, we are getting them to teach. They become subject matter experts. And they teach us their trade and their craft. And even there, we are doing a study of what the community wants to learn, whether it is young architects or whether it is students. And we're trying to see how we can choreograph that entire set of modules and videos that we are creating for the demand that is there. It's very interesting how the demand seems to be for the traditional and the vernacular, while most people are actually building conventional.
Yes, and which is very strange. Huh?
And I think it's a romanticization of this space, while if they don't learn the right detailing in the conventional and the the norm today, I think you're going to end up with very shoddy work there as well. So we're trying to make a balance of both, where construction workers teach both. So when you said, I always look at what the demand is, what people want, and try and rationalize that, find the gaps. So that's the approach that I take.
Yeah, I asked this question, again, as a part of my own reflection that people like you have gone a step further. In your case, you are saying step aside, but gone a step further to explore things which are different or unconventional than the way they are. I mean, trying to find a gap, the way you talked about Project Shrama or Project Bodh, and even for that matter, you mentioned about walking studio, where you go out of the studio and the studio is still there,
Right.
Finding work or opportunities from where it existed, but everybody is unable to see. This is also a very common pattern I'm observing from all the women I am talking to. And I think that is a major learning for me again, from women in built environment, because we have really taken those alternate paths, which usually is not seen. And if you are already teaching them, probably in future, it's going to be part of the education also, a mainstream education. So someone has to really step aside and think about things which you are already doing. So now comes the epic walk and the question on the epic walk, which is when I also got obsessed with Gita, and I thought, okay, I will talk to her one day. But please tell us, how did you also conceptualize, and how daring it was to really do that epic walk and also make everybody aware about the field? I mean, if I recall correctly, your goal was to talk about architecture, make people aware about architecture.
Design, I would say. Yeah, design.
Design, and what it does to the profession as well as to the society. You were meeting everyone and anyone, and how was the experience? I'm very keen to hear. I mean, of course, much of it is there on the online, but it's good to hear right from horse's mouth when we are here.
So I'm also coming out with a book soon on a 70-day walk cannot be captured through various conversations. So it's coming out with a book as well, which gives you the different anecdotes and, the different experiences that I faced. But it was certainly an epic experience. It's something that I wouldn't have given up for anything. About what kind of a challenge it was, I think it dawned on me only after it was over.
I can imagine.
And it took a while for me to even realize what I had accomplished. I was in a daze for a few days. I wasn't
all observing you.
I was very uncomfortable talking to people after it was over. I just wanted to be in my shell and just come to terms with what had happened. and what I had achieved. So I think, yes, it was in 2014 I took to running. I was 45 at that time. I was 53 when I undertook the walk. And it was something that came about because of an article I read in a newspaper about Priya Dutt and Sunil Dutt walking from Bombay to Amritsar. And it kind of blew me away. Not getting into the politics of why they did it, but the very idea of something like that blew me away. And it started gnawing at my, continuously gnawing at my senses, saying, why not? And it took 5 years. That was in 2017. And it was in, and I started writing, I started discussing. It was part of my discussions with my team that we need to do it. How can we do it? Can it be a sketching studio? Can we walk from here to there? Can we look at different climatic zones? And then COVID happened, and then you started seeing these visuals and images of people walking.
Yes.
And it kind of struck a chord, and that's when I committed in 2021, July. I told my family, I'm going. And then there was no turning back. And I'm someone who is very careful about planning and detailing. So I spent a huge amount of time the next few months went into deciding what the route should be, how it should be, where one goes through. But there was never a sense of inhibition or fear that what am I taking up? There was I don't think I even thought it was not possible to do. Only when I started walking, there were days when I felt, oh God, what have I done in 15 days? I'm, aching all over. Am I going to take this through? But there was never a moment when I thought, I do not want to do this. I'm not enjoying the pain and I want to give it up. It was never there. I was loving every moment of it. So yes, so I don't think there was ever a situation, even prior when I was planning, where I felt concerned that I'm going out there. What would I do? How would I manage? And in fact, initially till December, I didn't even have a team. I was imagining I would be walking with, I would rent a car for these 70 days and a car would just come along and my bags would be in the car. I never realized I needed a campaign manager. I needed this whole, and it slowly happened by talking to different people. I connected with those who had done such ventures and slowly built that team up, and then finding sponsors, finding good well-wishers who would contribute, support. And I think I also realized the importance, even if I say so myself, of being on show. Because this was a campaign that needed to reach, while it needed to reach people, I don't think I did. It was a speck in the ocean because our country is so huge. And I've just done this one walk where I might have met 2,000, 3,000 people who I've talked to. If it had to become larger, the movement, our community needs to get together. And that was really the objective, the power of us coming together. While the tagline for the walk was the power of design, I think intent was the power of our community coming together. And that's something I'm still working on. And I think there are different initiatives where different people come together and we are making small things happen. And I think there is space for everybody to, do things on their own or do it together. But I think it's important to realize that it's in our interest to share and not compete when it comes to some of these things. It's important to compete, when it comes to projects, but when it comes to being visible within the community and, being present there, I mean, nobody knows us. We are irrelevant for common people.
Yes, actually, yes.
98% of the people do not know of the existence of an architect. They think an engineer design.
Pronounce architect properly.
They think an engineer design. When I heard the word design, I literally danced that day if I'm hearing someone use the word design. So
I think we have to take it as a cause. Again, to reflect upon, I have been really dreaming of doing a nationwide, drive for water and women, and it has not yet happened. I keep dreaming, I keep making plans, but I think I will sit with you and make a list of what all I need to prepare, and also get some contacts from you who can really boost me up to just go. One has to just go for
It'll
it.
happen. Yes.
It will happen. It's in my, I think, one of my dream initiatives to take up, apart from something I'm writing about it. Let me come to the question around it when you were talking about this walk and also your years of experience. Response of people around, when you work in the field, when you work with your colleagues, when you work with, let's say, politicians or corporates and all. How do you think that over these years, have people's perception changed about presence of women in the profession?
Again, I don't know if it has been anything that that was part of my attention for me to realize if it has changed.
But certain incidences happen, when you were
yes. So I think as far as I'm concerned, I, as a woman or as an architect, as a person who's done all this, has only found great support from organizations, from individuals, from companies, from colleges, from faculty, from students, whoever. And I'm not saying this because I'm not saying it just for the sake of it. I'm being extremely honest. There would be moments that pull you down, without a doubt. I mean, those are
part of the game.
Yeah, those are far and few in between, I would say. I mean, nothing to really write home about. On what has changed, I think the numbers have changed for sure. There are colleges like 8:32 is what my college was. I'm sure it's at least 50-50, if not higher now.
Yes,
yeah, if not higher. So the number of women is in the profession is probably increased. Number of women in leadership positions is still something that is to be examined.
Concerned, yes.
Yeah, that is a matter of concern. Number of people who stick to the profession is still a matter of concern.
Yes.
The working conditions, making the workplace, whether it is college, whether it is a office, whether it is a site, is it comfortable for women to work in as comfortable for any other gender? I'm not so sure. That change has happened to a great extent. It may be better than before, for sure. I know.
Not to the standards it should be.
I know firms that allow, I mean, they have, I mean, I very sweetly, they have a baby cot in the office where someone can bring their child in. I know firms that have started giving paternity leave. So there are those changes, but I don't know if it's enough to make that big impact. Again, there are no rules that kind of governing this. Also, I think the difference in our profession particularly is that it's very informal.
Yes.
The setup in most architects' offices, including ethos, I would say. I'm talking about the structure of it.
It's very horizontal kind of situation.
That's one thing, but I'm also saying the formal structure, because we are expected to be proprietorships and not companies. And so the minute it's a proprietorship, there are certain limitations. And I think that change will happen when the Act changes and allows architects to practice as private limited companies. And I think that should happen soon. When that happens, then all the other laws that govern companies kind of come into play here.
Yes.
While in these loosely structured companies, there is no need for certain provisions. There is no need for safe
employment security and all. Yes.
Vishakha commissions to examine certain things. The ICCs where I can go and complain. The formality of even whether issuing formal letters of employment saying you are employed in this organization is also kind of not really mandated. You could continue to be informally on the payrolls. So these are all things, reasons why those formal guidelines and change is not happening. In terms of, you do see the consciousness with which organizations include women speakers in conferences now. But you still see in decision-making positions,
We are not there. This is
even by reservation, it doesn't happen because there is a protest to even the reservation sometimes.
yes.
And I don't know if there needs to be reservation. I'm not saying there needs to be, but even if it is suggested, it is shooed away. And even by, you won't find more than maybe 20% or max 30% women in committees, in organizations. And I think it's important because I think women,
extremely
issues women face, the way they face it, besides societal pressures, and taking that viewpoint when you're making policies, when you're making guidelines, when you're making laws, in the space of design and architecture is extremely important.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so much in echo with you on this, and I'm working on water also, and it is very similar in that sector as well. You know, we have less than 20% in the global standards of presence of women, and in India even it is less than 10% of water professionals. You know, so when I compare both the fields, and I see that it's very similar. And also in architecture, at the time and again, my friends, and I'm sure your friends, and also have discussed the whole issue of exploitation, and especially exploitation of girls and women and even young architects is a big concern, which is going to come over hopefully slowly. But sticking back to the whole idea of women in the profession, and you have already acknowledged our bleak presence both in the profession as well as in the leadership role. I would like to get your viewpoints on a very tricky question, and only professional question in this whole conversation, and also penultimate question from me. I would like you to imagine a situation in the cities, in the country, in the profession, if women were more in numbers and more in decision making or more in leadership in the profession of architecture or built environment or design. I use the word built environment more so that it is more encompassing with planning, design, and architecture. What do you think will be the difference, would have been the difference in the way cities are today or our built environment is today? It's a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of conjecture, but I think when planning happens today, if the people in charge and involved are largely men, there is a whole viewpoint that's being negated or not being factored in. Although you might say, oh, I had a woman in the committee. That's not, I had a woman, so I got a viewpoint. Or we did interviews of women to understand their problems, and hence we have factored it in. I don't think that's adequate. So I think it'll be a more equal and just, I wouldn't say, yes, society as well, but I think way of planning, way of addressing issues, way of our spaces would be more equitable and just for sure if there were more women. And I think also maybe, I mean, again, generalizing, but I think things will move faster, probably because I think there is this whole, faster is also a relative term, because I know there are people looking to fast forward decisions and decision making. I'm not talking about that. But what I mean is there is this urge to conclude a discussion, conclude a decision with inputs of everybody.
Yes, more inclusive decision also.
Decision making is also something that would happen, I feel, and would be directed by women being part of the committee, is part of, not I'm using the word committee, but part of these groups. I don't know what exactly we're talking about. If you're talking about making policies, then that. If you're talking about designing spaces, then that. Wherever.
Imagining so 80% are women architects in the city, let's say. How will cities
Well,
be?
I'm not so sure that's
I also
as
don't wish to have that situation.
yeah, I don't think I
but,
think that's
but
going
if
to
there are
work in a
if there are men, why not imagine that situation and imagine what cities would be then, you know?
yeah. So again, I think it still will not be inclusive.
Yes, I'm sure. And that's a very
Yeah.
valid question for answer from you. But I was more
I'm
thinking
not even saying
the
it needs to
changes
be
in the built environment, you know?
Yeah, I'm not saying it needs, yeah, the built environment, if you were to push me to answer, I
No,
would
no.
say probably it'll be happier. It'll be a happier built
Healthier,
environment
cleaner,
than it is
happier
now.
spaces.
Than it is now, because I think, but again, I think it'll be a very transient situation. If it continues to persist, we'll probably end up with situations where it's not going to be, it might end up being this. For a while, maybe we will all, want ethics and the right way of doing things and all to prevail. But after a point, I think there will be the alphas in the
Yes.
women community also that will come in. So
Yes.
I'm not sure it can be one without the other. I think it needs to be together.
Very well put. I'm sure people like you and me, we believe that we would like to live a day when we don't have to talk gender, actually.
Absolutely.
Because,
Absolutely. Not just gender. We don't need to talk inclusion in any way.
Anyways, yeah, I mean, it's so surprising that we talk about sustainable buildings when every building has to be sustainable. It's just like this, spaces for differently able people. It has to be just like that. I mean, it is unfortunate that we are in a situation when we have to really talk about it, and it is important to make noise about it so that it comes to the notice of the people who are in those kind of situations. So amen for the same that we live a day when we will have more gender neutral profession or gender equal profession. That brings me to the last question, which is very easy and more focused towards younger generation, because my team is also a bunch of young fellows who listen to you people, and they come back to me and say that how inspiring it is to listen to their stories, because they also get some clues about their own life there, because they are unable to discuss everything, being a mentor. I like to know everything about them. They would like to share with me, but still, I mean, they get clues from listening to all of you. So my last question to you is message for the younger generation on two aspects: about the field of built environment or being in design, architecture, planning, and how they should be really conducting themselves to engender the situation of present situation, so that in future we reach a place where we don't have to talk about gender in architecture. Over to you, Geeta.
Yeah. So the first part of your question was on the second part was on how to conduct yourself to address gender. But the first part was on, can you repeat that part again?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So you were walking and you realized that our profession is almost non-existent, So the message is for that, for
Right.
all youth.
Right.
So what it is to be in the profession of architecture and how they should
So
be.
I think this is something that we need to be more visible.
Yes.
Visible with communities, being out there. Maybe it's also a good idea to stipulate a certain percentage of your time for community,
Really?
Designing for communities. And when you do that, I think you will be more visible, and it's going to make, I'm sure it's going to help them build their own profession, whether it is actual design and build, or it is writing, whatever it is, it could be even architecture and law. If you want to get into a space like that as well, if you could earmark a certain time and allocate a certain budget for that from your, and I know a lot of architects who do it. And I think it helps them. It helps them become better human beings. It helps them with their practice as well, because you build connections. I'm trying to give you a carrot that makes you.
Yes, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, but I think it's in the interest of the whole community to be more visible, making design more accessible to people who don't have it and afford it. For instance, and this is a message I take to all faculty members in colleges, why don't you ask your students to present their designs to the non-technical staff, non-architectural staff, because after all, they are the ones who you're designing for.
Yes.
Your design.
They are the clients. Yes.
And if you're designing, say, auditorium or a music hall, and you make it look like a guitar, does the man who's seeing it on the road even realize it's a guitar? And do you need to do that? What does that person want? Again, the same questions. And I think that's something that faculty can also do, but also incorporate, like this walking studio where you're walking in the community is your studio then, you know?
Yes.
And doing a bit of that will certainly help. And then I think also realizing that every line that you draw has an impact on the bricklayer that is laying your bricks, or on the person who's making the bricks somewhere.
Yes.
Every choice that you make of the materials, your site does not end with your site. Your site goes beyond that. And having that consciousness in everything, and it's very easy to lose it.
Yes.
Because there's
a lot of attractions and
distractions and attractions.
Yes.
It's very easy to lose it. So having your vision and focus very clearly there, and it's not easy. So I also tell youngsters to begin with one thing that you will not compromise on. Even if you lose a project, I will not compromise on this one thing. And then you bring on another thing, and then you bring on another thing over a period of
like a New Year resolution.
Yeah, you'll probably get toward 5 projects. No, it can be a resolution for every project. On this project, I will not compromise on this. On this project, I will not compromise on this. So there are various ways in which you can build that in. But I think it's really a wake-up call for us. If roti, kapda, or makan is what they say, and makan is part of the 3 essentials.
The biggest part, actually.
And they don't know you. They know a doctor who they need to visit once in a month, once in 2 months, hopefully. But they're living with what, you're supposed to design day in and day out, and they don't know of you. It's serious.
Yes, it is.
I was happy this morning. We were interviewing a bunch of people for scholarships. And I met these 2 girls from Kanyakumari. Firstly, they were girls from Kanyakumari, studying in Chennai.
Okay.
And I was really delighted. And from there was one who was a farmer's daughter, and there was one who's, I think, again, a father was a tailor or something like that. So coming from very modest backgrounds, from agriculture, actually from the rural community, wouldn't it be lovely if this child went back and practiced in Kanyakumari?
Yes.
Because she understands the
carried away with all those glitterati's.
And, there are examples where people have gone back to small towns and made a great life for themselves.
Absolutely. A great life for themselves and also for others. I mean, they have made good names, good money also for that matter.
So that's the first part of your question. I don't know if I've said many things, not just one thing. So I don't know if it helps. But the second part of your question on
engendering the profession.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to go back to what I said about being about sharing and being open to and hence it doesn't mean only a gender, but I'm saying you be open about sharing, whether it is knowledge, whether it is activities that you're doing, bring people together, and I think your voice will be heard. So I think that's something that I'd like to say, and probably leave it at that, because I think that speaks a lot for what you could do, and each one can interpret it in many ways for themselves. So that's why I think the strength is in the collective, whether it is to bring about any kind of change, and that holds good for addressing this issue of gender as well.
Nice. Very well put. I think, as you mentioned, the profession itself is a collective profession, and not really the way it is often projected in the curriculum that you have to work on your own, whereas we have to be really humble about the fact that we operate in collectives only. And if
we are not collectively strong, whether it is men, women, whoever, we are not collectively strong, we are pulling every one of us down.
Yes,
I
it's
think
works. It's a Porter theory I used to learn during my economics MPhil, that it is for good for everyone if we can really lift each other's up. It's like complementing each other in the profession, and then there can be competition, of course. But
course.
unless and until we complement, we are also not increasing the scope of the profession. And that is where the more I am interacting with women like you, I'm learning that there are so many ways to engage in architecture, and that also calls for redefining the scope of architecture. And that is only possible when I meet wonderful people like you. So thank you so much, Geeta. I hope it was not too much taxing on you and you enjoyed this conversation. We
No
tried to
taxing.
keep
When
it
you're
simple.
speaking your heart, I think
Yes.
it doesn't matter. That's what you got me to do.
Yes, so thank you so much, Geeta, and thanks for your time and agreeing with such a short notice. We really wish to reach 50 as soon as possible, and I hope you will also help us to connect to other women now that you have gone through it. So you know that it's really not a tough ask, but I hope you really achieve all the dreams which you are aiming for, and those dreams are not yours, and we now know it very clearly. It is a collective dream, and it is good for the profession itself. I also hope that we come together some point in time very
Looking
soon,
forward to that.
because we have really charted paths which are very similar, to step aside and do something which can complement the current profession in education. So I'm sure we have a lot more to do together. It's just that we connected now, and it's a very good start. Thank you so much, Geeta.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Mansee.
Thank you. Please take care.